Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad to be here with all of you. Right on time for once, right? I hate being late for anything, and I'm glad to be right on time tonight here in my lovely Brooklyn apartment with plenty of things to talk about with you all this evening. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell, and away we go.
The American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome, 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 welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's Wednesday night. I'm here in my lovely Brooklyn apartment, and we're going to have another one of our great live streams. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. Now, the way we do things here, for those of you who may not be familiar, is that I give opening remarks. While those opening remarks are being given, I then write down any super chats that come in. Then from there, we do the roll call, where I call you all out as I see you, names and locations, and we find out who it is on the other side of the camera who's watching. And then from there, I answer super chat questions for the rest of the night. So if there's something you would like me to talk about in the second half of the show, shoot me a super chat, and I will do my best to give you an answer. It may not be the answer you are looking for, but for the most part, I will give an answer within reason. I tend to give answers to questions. And, you know, when you guys ask me a really good question that gets me going and I've got a lot to say, it's awesome. So it's really, really awesome. So there you go. That's the three parts of our show: opening remarks, roll call, and answering questions, the super chat Q&A at the end. So if you got something you want me to talk about, send me a super chat. Now, I guess before we jump into everything, we jump into my opening remarks, you know, I'm just going to make sure everyone's up to date on everything that's going on. First thing first, right? Since we got to be on top of everything here. The Summit Against Hypocrisy, an anti-imperialist gathering, the first 2-day gathering of the Center for Political Innovation, is scheduled to take place in Washington, D.C., March 25th and 26th. The link is below. The link is also being dropped in the chat to register and become an attendee. We'd love to have you there. So if you can sign up, if you can register and attend, that would be awesome. So far, I am putting this event together, and it is getting better by the moment. We got Nick Brana there. It looks like Scott Ritter. It looks like we're going to have, just some great speakers. Daniel Villa, the radio host on WBAI. Don DeBar, longtime anti-imperialist radio host from New York City. Jyoti Brar, the leader of the Communist Party of Great Britain, Marxist-Leninist, is flying in from the United Kingdom. She's going to be giving a long presentation Sunday morning about the anti-war struggle and the global communist movement. That's going to be awesome. That's just going to be downright awesome. Yeah, wow. I mean, it just keeps getting better. We will ask, I see Christians asking what's the cost to attend. We will ask some donation at the door, but nothing is mandatory. People will be able to just give online if they feel like it. We want people there. That's the main thing, because we're going to have a heck of a program for everybody. Lots of music, lots of speeches. We got a lot of countries we have to cover against Joe Biden's lies. The whole conference is intended to refute Joe Biden's disgusting summit for democracy. That's why we're calling it the Summit Against Hypocrisy. It will be our pre-buttal the weekend before. It's going to be at a hotel in downtown Washington, D.C. If you register, you'll be given the location and you'll be able to come. You'll be on the guest list. It's going to be awesome. It's really, really going to be awesome. And I'm hearing from people around the country who are going to be there. There's going to be a lot of really important anti-imperialists who are going to come out and speak. I was talking to people from the Bolivarian Circle of the United States. I've been talking with the Party of Communists, the PCUSA. I've been talking with the American Student Union, the Korean Friendship Association. I mean, this is really going to be a badass event. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be really, 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 really awesome. And I'm really, really excited about it. So I hope that you will go ahead and register. If you can't make it, or if you just want to help us out, you can donate directly to the conference. We have a donation stripe all set up. So if you can't make it and you just want to make sure this very important anti-imperialist conference in Washington, D.C. happens, shoot us a donation. There's a donate link. It's down below. I just dropped it in the chat. Shoot us a donation. That would really, really help because, we're a little bit over budget and we're scrambling to make sure everything is going to be there. Peter Coffin is coming, before I forget. The great comedian, famous comedian Peter Coffin is going to be there. And Peter Coffin is actually planning to make a documentary about the conference. He's going to be with us at the rehearsals. He's going to be with us in the trainings. He's going to interview people. He's actually making like a full-length documentary about the Summit Against Hypocrisy. Seriously, I am so excited. I have not been excited about a conference like this in a long time. This is a full 2 days in Washington, D.C. Anti-imperialism, music, speeches, socialism, anti-imperialism, solidarity with the socialist countries, international guests. You'll get to hang out with Jyoti Brar. How cool is that? You'll get to hang out with Peter Coffin. How cool is that? I mean, it's going to be a badass weekend. This weekend is really, really something special. Shout out to Elizabeth, president of CPI, who's working really, really hard to coordinate everything. Shout out to Peter, who's on an international trip, but he's our camera guy. He's going to be working really, really hard. Shout out to all the people that are going to be speaking. I mean, so many people. I mean, Noah's going to speak on the DPRK in North Korea, and we got just so many people going to speak on so many different things, and so much music and workshops. And oh man, Tyler's going to be there. He's planning a great presentation. It's going to be awesome. So please sign up and attend. Please shoot us a donation to make it go easier, because we're rubbing nickels and dimes together. It is not cheap to put on one of these events, especially when you have to house a team from out of town and all of that. So shoot us a donation if you can. That would be great. And if you want to just go ahead and register, because you will not regret coming to the Summit Against Hypocrisy. Do not miss the summit. Ryan Cotton's going to be there. He's giving a talk. Simon Miller. Wow. I mean, it's just so many great people. Lumpia Logic. You'll get to hang out with Lumpia Logic. That's a privilege in and of itself. Lumpia is great. She's got a great way of being. John McCarthy and so many great people are going to be there. If you can get yourself to Washington, D.C. For 2 days, it will be worth it. I can assure you it will be worth it. And on top of all the other perks I just mentioned about our great conference coming up, on top of all the other perks, I've got one more perk, and it's this, my new book, Where is America Going? Marxism, MAGA, and the Coming Revolution. Everyone who comes will get a free copy of this book. Yay! I just wrote this book, 415 pages of new content. It's new stuff. Except I did put the introduction to socialism and utopian and scientific. I put that at the very end. But other than that, it's, I guess, maybe 350 pages of new content, all new content. Where is America going? Everyone who comes will get their own copy of this book. So there you go. This book is available now on Amazon. It is my latest book, and it is not a compilation of articles. I've published many compilations of articles in the past. This is not one of them. This is not a compilation of articles I just published. This is a new book that is the culmination of years of research. I look at the bibliography we got in here. There's a bibliography in here that goes on for pages. This is years of studying about the synthetic left and so many topics. This is really, I'm really glad this book is out. I've had this book in me for years, and now the book has been released. It's out there. It is a long book, but it has a lot in there about Bonapartism and degrowth and anti-imperialism and the broken political compass and, divisions in the ruling class and Donald Trump and Tulsi Gabbard and George Sorel and Lukács and Nietzsche. And this book has a lot of content, and it is a book that I've spent a long time working on. I wrote it in the style of a classical Marxist report. When there's a situation in your country, and it is on Amazon. I'm dropping the link in the chat right now, dropping it once again. It is on Amazon. And when you're giving it, when you're a Marxist, you have a job to explain what's happening, and then to give an analysis of why it's happening based on your understanding of the class forces and the underlying economic base and dialectical and historical materialism. And then from there, it is your responsibility to say what to do about it. That's the training that I received. If you're giving an analytical presentation as a Marxist, whether it's a speech or an article or whatever, your job is to say what's happening, but more importantly, to say why it is happening and to give the analysis and insight that only Marxist economics and our understanding of history can supply. And then from there to say what we can do about it, how we can intervene. And that classic Marxist style report. I reported what was happening in America, and then I explain why it's happening, what the roots of the economic and political crisis are, and what we can do about it. And I lay the basis for building a united front against imperialism, an anti-monopoly coalition. And I talk about the history of the new communist movement of the 1970s. And I talk about the Bolivarian movements of Latin America. And I talk about the Chinese Revolution and the Bolshevik Revolution. And I talk about Leon Trotsky and who was handling him. And I talk about George Sorel and counter gangs and Bonapartism and Nazism and fascism. And oh my goodness, this book, it is very wide ranging. You will learn from this book unless you have just listened to absolutely every word I've ever said and been with me holding my hand for the past 3 or 4 years, which some of you have, to be fair. But unless you have been with me every step of the way, you're going to learn something from this book. So this book is now available. Where is America Going? Marxism, MAGA, and the Coming Revolution. And if you're a Haas fan, you should read this book. If you're a Jackson Hinkle fan, you should read this book, because this book is the closest thing to a MAGA communist manifesto that has ever been published. Now, I don't endorse the brand MAGA communism exactly. I don't think it's more of a brand that I think is designed to kind of provoke people. And I hold myself to a little bit more higher standards of seriousness. So this is not, I don't fully endorse the MAGA communism brand, but this book is about as close to a MAGA communist manifesto as you could ever get. And if you consider yourself to be a MAGA communist, this is the book for you, because the ending, I don't want to give it away, but Chapter 4 is going to teach you, some important things. If there's ever been anyone who sounds like a MAGA communist, it's been me. Even though I don't endorse the brand completely. So I would give this book a read. Lori's already reading it. She says she's learning a lot from it. I hope that you will give it a read and learn from it. And if you don't have to buy it if you're coming in March, you can just get a free copy. When you attend, you can get your own free copy. Isn't that neat? You don't have to buy anything. You can just get it at the door. I have ordered hundreds of copies of it already, and everyone who comes will get their own free copy. I can even sign it for you at the conference if you want me to. If you want me to, I could even do that for you. So it's gonna be awesome. So I hope to see you all in DC. I hope that all of you get a copy of this book soon. Wow. These are crazy times in which the politics of the world is changing very quickly and very rapidly, but we are also changing and swinging into action very rapidly to try and get some things done for the good. I went on Kim Iverson's show yesterday. A lot of people have been watching that video and sharing that video. It's approaching 10,000 views on social media. Yeah, I see the super chat here. Let me scroll up. I'll write it down here, right? And, I am very excited about everything that's going on. So those are the big announcements that we've got. A couple other announcements. If you're a part of the Patreon community, don't worry. I know I'm late this month, but we haven't forgotten you. We are going to have a patrons only stream. We're going to have a patrons only stream in the next week. Within 7 days, we're going to have a patrons only stream. So you have not been forgotten. And if you want to sign up and be part of our intimate patrons only community, it's not too late yet because I'm behind. I usually do it the first of the month, but as you can see, I'm behind. So you can sign up on Patreon. You can go ahead and sign up on the Patreon. Love to have you in the next 7 days. Within the next 7 days, we're going to have a patrons only stream. Sorry to be late with that. So we got that going on. Another thing, the Center for Political Innovation, the group that is carrying out these amazing operations to try and change U.S. society, we're growing every day. People are joining our organization and becoming members. We are expanding our ranks. New members are signing up. We are actually delegating among the boards of directors who will call up the different new members who've signed up. So by all means, if you want to become a new member of the Center for Political Innovation and help us put on these great conferences, maybe get trained to give Marxist classes, maybe get trained to help put out material in your community. Yeah, you beat me to the punch, Jay. You beat me to the punch. All right, I'll get to that. Thoughts on International Day. And, if you are by all means going to be interested in becoming involved in the work we do, just become a member of the CPI. We need more members. We are an educational think tank. And that this conference that's coming up, it is our pre-buttal to Joe Biden's State of the Union. It is the Summit Against Hypocrisy. Here, we'll put it on the screen one more time. It is the Summit Against Hypocrisy, but this is also a national conference. This is a 2-day national conference of our organization. The board of directors is preparing a very thorough organizational report. As many members as possible are going to be giving presentations on a variety of topics. You'll get to learn about every different country that's under attack by the U.S. imperialists. You'll get to learn about the U.S. situation and the struggles of the American working class. That's going to be awesome. You will get to learn about the ideological roots of our tendency. And, a presentation is being planned now. It's going to talk about William Z. Foster and Sam Marcy and Lyndon LaRouche and kind of the ideological influences that gave birth to us. You're going to learn about various anti-imperialist leaders around the world who are being suppressed and the new economy that's emerging. We're going to have guests from the Schiller Institute. We're going to have guests from the Bolivarian circles and the Party of Communists and the Uhuru movement. And this is going to be really something. You don't want to miss it. So sign up, register, and come be part of it. So I just wanted to throw that out there. That is the announcements. I'm just throwing all of that out there. So now the way this works is I am going to jump into my opening remarks. I've already started writing super chats down. If there's something you want me to talk about in the second half of the show, just shoot me a super chat and I will do my best to give you an answer. It's always good when someone throws me a softball in the super chats and then I hit a home run. Ask me a good question, a question that will Get me talking. Ask me a question that'll get me talking, and I will get talking. That's how it works. It's up to you all to make the second half of the show awesome. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notifications bell. March 8th is International Women's Day. And I'll just briefly, because that is the day that it is today, briefly tell you what you need to know about International Women's Day. It's actually International Working Women's Day. And this is a holiday that was declared by the Second International. This is a communist holiday. There would be no March 8th International Women's Day if it wasn't for communism. I mean, this is a very, very communist holiday in its roots. Now it's the UN recognizes it. I mean, it's practically every country in the world recognizes it, and you would think it has nothing to do with politics, but it's a very, very communist holiday. It goes back to the Triangle Shirtwaist fire in New York City. I don't know if you know about this, but there was a horrendous event in New York City. And in New York City, where today there's something called Washington Square Park, very close to what is now called Washington Square Park, near where NYU, New York University, is. About 100 years ago, well, over 100 years ago, about 120 years ago, there was a factory called the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory that made pajamas. Now, they made pajamas. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory was a sweatshop. And there was a fire in this factory. And this factory employed exclusively women. Not men, but exclusively women. There was a fire in the factory, and the bosses locked the doors, locked them in to keep the workers from getting out too quickly, to regulate, these workers in the factory. The bosses locked the doors, and it was mostly immigrant women in New York City were burned to death. It was a horrendous incident. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire of 1911. It was in 1911 that this happened, and it was a horrendous incident. It caused the death of 146 garment workers, 123 women, and 23 men. Most of them were teenaged. They were Italian or Jewish, and they were 14 to 23 years old. A horrendous incident, the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. And this event happened, and it was in response to this event that there was a widespread mobilization of protests in support of working class women, in support of immigrant workers who worked in the factories and were suffering. And it was out of the protests against the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire and the building up of the International Ladies Garment Workers Union, the ILGWU, which was a labor union that was built. It was in response to that International Women's Day as a holiday was called. March 8th became International Working Women's Day, a day to honor working class women in response to the horrendous incident known as the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. So there you go. And it was the Communist International. It wasn't the Communist International. It was the Socialist International, the Second International, that voted to make March 8th International Working Women's Day. And it was the Second International that declared it. And one of the delegates who was at the Congress of the Second International and voted to make International Working Women's Day a holiday was named Vladimir Lenin. Did you know that? Vladimir Lenin was one of the people who was a delegate at the gathering of all the socialist parties in the world that gathered the Second International and voted to make International Working Women's Day a holiday. So one of the people who created International Women's Day was none other than Vladimir Lenin. Vladimir Lenin was one of the people who voted to make International Women's Day a holiday. So when people talk about Women's History Month, March 8th, and International Women's Day, IWD, they're talking about a communist holiday. And it's important to point that out because it gets very, 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 very annoying to me. I will never forget when I was watching J.K. Rowling be interviewed by Jon Stewart. And J.K. Rowling had just published her first non-Harry Potter book. It was her first book that was a fiction book. It wasn't about Harry Potter. So J.K. Rowling is sitting there with Jon Stewart, and she's explaining that her book is about a low-income housing unit that's built in a red area. And she says, now in Britain, a red area means a left-wing area. And Jon Stewart's like, yeah, that's weird. In the United States, red states are the conservative states, and blue states are the liberal and left ones. But why is it in Britain you guys have red for the liberal? Why is that? The Labour Party red. What's going on there? Why is that? And J.K. Rowling's like, yeah, I don't know why that is. And the two of them just sat there perplexed about why it was that in Britain, left-wing politics is colored red. And I sat there and I wanted to grab my television and throw it out the window. I was so angry. I'm thinking, I know why they call left-wing areas red areas in Britain. It's because the people's flag is deepest red. It's shrouded oft our martyr dead. And ere their limbs grew stiff and cold, our hearts blood-eyed its every fold. Then raised the scarlet standard high. Within its shade we live and die. Though cowards flinch and traitors sneer, we'll keep the red flag flying here. That's the anthem of the British Labour Party. One of the biggest political parties in Britain has a song that is its anthem called the Red Flag. Why would... Oh, and it's just they have done so much to erase the history of our movement. And that's why what the Center for Political Innovation is doing is so important. When you have two well-educated people, one of the most famous writers in the world, one of the most famous TV hosts in the world, I don't know, why would the red be associated with the left wing in Britain? I don't know, Davey. Oh boy. I don't know, it's just one of them weird things. They could have made it purple. They could have made it pink. I don't know what's going on. It's infuriating. And that shows that what we are doing is really, really important. If you don't think the work the Center for Political Innovation is doing, putting on our conferences, publishing our books, putting on our classes, publishing our textbooks, giving seminars, it's really important. It's really important what we do because they are trying to completely wipe out the history of one of the most important movements that has ever happened, that is still happening around the world, because they don't want you to understand China. They don't want you to understand Russia. They don't want you to understand Venezuela. They don't want you to understand Cuba. They don't want you to understand Vietnam. They want to whitewash your mind. They want to whitewash your mind. And this is the theme of my opening remarks for tonight. And I want to tell you that, things have gotten so gosh darn weird in American politics. I saw this video on YouTube and I loved it. I thought it was awesome. I thought it was absolutely awesome. This is a very conservative video, but I couldn't have agreed with it more because the people that it's about and it's poking fun at are also people that drive me up the wall. And this is why it's important that we actually preserve our movement. And so I believe I am able to show this video. I believe I'm able to show this video. It's not music, so I don't think they're going to hit me with copyrights here. If they do, I'll have to take the stream down or whatever. But here we go. This is from the Babylon Bee. We'll react to this fun video that it's a very conservative video, but I 100% agree with it.
I was just at Starbucks picking up my half-cap, no-whip almond granola latte when I noticed the most disturbing thing. The barista that handed me my drink was definitely most likely, conservative. After promptly throwing away my drink that was absolutely, probably poison, I decided to make this list to help others avoid situations like mine. Here are some warning signs that your Starbucks barista is conservative. They only wear one pride pin. Doing the bare minimum, it's like they, them doesn't even care about LGBTQ plus rights. They have
That's right. You know, that's one aspect of modern 21st century leftists is you have to make LGBT, homosexuality, transgender the focus of every conversation. Every conversation. That is one thing about the left these days, right? If you're going to call yourself a leftist now, if you're going to be part of this modern entity that calls the left, every meeting has to begin with your pronouns. Are you they, them, she, he, or whatever? Every manifesto has to include a long-winded explanation of how many genders there are. You know, I am embarrassed. For years, I used to write for the Workers' World newspaper. Do you know this? I wrote for their newspaper. And 2-3 years ago, they came out with an issue of their paper. And the headline was, "Abortion on Demand for All Genders." Abortion on demand for all genders. And I looked at that and I thought, I am embarrassed that I ever wrote for this paper. Do you think that's working class? You're going to go into working class communities and, you know, yeah, what we're concerned about is, you know, is whether transgender men who get pregnant can have abortion. It was just, and it's like, that's not what the people who were fighting around the Triangle Shirtwaist fire were talking about. Can guarantee you that. That is not what Lenin and the people voting to make International Working Women's Day a holiday, that is not what they were thinking about. Yeah, you know, it's one thing to demand that people have the right to be who they are, and the gay rights movement has a history very much tied up with communism, and you're talking to someone who knew Leslie Feinberg. Leslie Feinberg, the first trans activist in the history of the United States, is someone I actually worked with. She worked with me on a few articles I wrote. I interacted with her on a number of occasions. So it's not that I'm hating trans people or LGBT people. But you know what? If you used to go to the Soviet Union, this is a fact. If you went to the Soviet Union at the height of the Cold War, 60s and 70s, you said, you know, hey, what is your position on homosexuality? You know what they would have said to you? They would have said, we don't have that here. That's a disease from capitalism. If you went to China at the height of the Cultural Revolution, even up into the 70s and 80s, if you said to them, hey, what's your position on homosexuality? They would have said, we don't have that here. That's a disease from capitalism. I should show you some articles that North Korea has written about the LGBT issue. I mean, they're not politically correct. Let me put it that way. Now, Cuba has done a lot. They were kind of pioneered LGBT rights, and so it's a complicated story. But the reduction of our politics of what it means to be a leftist and a socialist to how many pride pins you wear, I'm furious about that. That is not okay with that. So I'm enjoying the video so far. Continue, Babylon B.
Fewer than 13 piercings. Also, be on the lookout for natural colored hair. It's a dead giveaway.
Yeah, what is that with, leftism is associated with piercings and multicolored hair. Why? I mean, I don't know. People can dress however they want to dress and, but I mean, yeah.
Ground and scream maniacally like a banshee at the mere mention of Trump's name.
Yeah, they don't have a meltdown about Donald Trump.
A normal person would. Okay, trigger warning. This next one is really scary. They use the conservative code words, Merry Christmas. It's like a modern day secret Nazi handshake. Ugh. They give a knowing nod to anyone who orders black coffee, the official drink of red-pilled cis males. I didn't even know Starbucks sold black coffee. They spell names correctly. This is a sure sign of a right-wing homeschool education, but just because they can spell does not mean that they're not a fascist. They won't let transients defecate on the restroom walls. Where do they want them to go? The toilet? This is oppression. If your barista exhibits any of these signs, take the drink and throw it directly into their ugly Ronald Reagan-loving face. And then get them fired, of course. Are there any other warning signs we may have missed? Leave them down in the comment section below.
So there you go. I enjoyed that video because these people annoy the hell out of me. I'll just be honest with you. I'm going to turn the sound off. These people, I can't stand them. These people are not communists. These people are not Marxists. These people are disgusting, and they hate the working class, and they've hijacked our movement, and they claim to speak in our movement while they go around promoting war, while they go around promoting regime change operations, while they spit on American workers, while they want us all to be poorer. They want to drive the country into poverty. These people, I can't stand them. These people ain't communists, and they annoy the hell out of me. And I'm in New York City. I'm in Brooklyn. I see them every day. I can't stand them. And they have nothing to do. I don't want to tell people I'm a communist anymore. It's hard to tell people I'm a communist anymore because people think this is a communist. This is not a communist. Whatever this is, this middle class, judgy, woke, whatever, it ain't communism. It ain't communism. And we gotta stick up for our own history. If I was a working class person and I thought this was communism, I would hate communists also. I would hate communists also if I thought this is what a communist was. These people are obnoxious. These people hate the working class. They want to make everyone poorer. They are pro-war. They are pro-FBI. So I'm just telling you, folks, that's why the work we do is so gosh darn important. And now that I showed you that video, I'm actually going to tell you a story of something that happened. It used to be like an old cliche. People would say, well, a funny thing happened on the way to the event, but actually, I think that there's a musical about ancient Rome. A funny thing happened on the way to the forum, and that's alluding to, like comedians would begin their routine by saying a funny thing happened on the way, but something funny actually did happen on the way home tonight. I was on my way home from the city, went into the city to take care of some business. On my way home, I changed trains from one train to another train. And in the subway, there was a very old hippie. And, not something you see every day. Sometimes you'll see religious folks, Jehovah's Witnesses, handed stuff out in the subways. Occasionally, very, very rarely, you'll see people that are fundraising for like a charity for animals or something. Sometimes you'll see the Nation of Islam selling the final call if you're like in downtown Brooklyn. But today was a special day because there was an old hippie and I bought a button. He was selling buttons, and I bought the only button I figured I could really buy, the Power to the People. So I bought this Power to the People button from the old hippie on the train today. And this old hippie is there, and he's, this is an older guy, and he's selling buttons. And I think the guy probably owns a button maker and he needs to make some extra bucks. He's probably retired. And his buttons, they have rainbow flags on them. It's my body, my choice. It's Black Lives Matter with the Black national flag, and I'm looking over his buttons and I'm waiting for the next train and I'm kind of bored. And so, I'm looking over his buttons and, for $3, I bought a Power to the People button, and I started talking to him and I started trying to explain to him where I'm at politically. And this guy, it went right over his head. I said, I used to be in the Workers' World Party. And he knew about that, right? This guy's a guy who sells activist-y buttons. So he knew about that. He's like, oh, okay, I know about them. And he knew about Yoff and Sam Marcy. I'm like, well, I used to be in the Workers' World Party. He's like, oh, okay. And I said, but now I feel like the left has kind of gotten off the rails. I mean, they're supporting the FBI, and they're supporting war with Russia. And this guy just, he couldn't, it was like no comprendo. He could not understand what I was saying. And he's like, well, he said, I'm not against conservatives, sir. I'm just against the really far right, like Donald Trump. And I'm like, no, you're missing the point. Like, I'm not a conservative. Like, I'm a leftist, but I'm telling you, the left has kind of changed. I used to work with Ramsey Clark, and he's like, no. He's like, I even believe in the right to own guns. I just think we should have a limit on assault. I'm like, no, I'm not a conservative, sir. Not a Republican. I'm a communist. But the left, I was trying to explain to him, and he was like, no comprendo. He just couldn't get it. And it was sad. And I'm not the only person who's had moments like this recently. This was clearly a guy who'd been going to these rallies since the Vietnam War years. He'd been going to anti-war protests for years. And I was trying to explain to him that the left of today that supports the FBI, that wants war with Russia, that is trying to investigate Russian influence in America, that this is not the left of his day. That the left back in the 60s, the civil rights movement, and then the Black Liberation movement and the Black Panthers and you know, and I was trying to get him to understand this, that he was an old leftist. And I was trying to get him to see where I'm coming from, and he just couldn't. It was like, no comprendo, no comprendo. I gave him a hug. I said, I'm glad you're out here doing what you're doing. He smiled. He didn't know what to make of me. You know, and I felt sad about that, because it's like you want to be able to connect with people, but we're in this weird period where a lot of people are just politically lost, because if you are a genuine communist, you cannot go along with the woke thing. The woke thing is your enemy. And trust me, I tried to pander to these people. I tried to, to be friendly with them and try to nudge them. No, they hate you. They want to murder you. They think you're a Nazi. If you don't want war with Russia, you're the same as Adolf Hitler. If you don't think trans should be the center of every conversation, you are the same as the people who threw Jews in gas chambers. Like, these people the wokes are really vile, and you can't have anything to do with them. And conservatives now are in this weird spot where they'll actually have a conversation with you. And like this guy, I was trying to get him to understand, and he kept saying, well, he's like, well, you're further to the right than me, but I'm not against you. I'm just against Trump. And I'm like, no, like, he just couldn't get it. He just couldn't get it. Poor guy. And, I mean, in his day, when people were running through the streets of New York City with the Viet Cong flag, chanting, ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh, the NLF is going to win. And, and Fred Hampton and the Black Panthers were the heroes, and the young people were out protesting against the war. And, the world made sense to him. And the way the world has gone now, it doesn't make any sense to him. And he doesn't get it. I'm trying to explain to him the left is more pro FBI. The left is more pro war. He doesn't get that. At the same time, why is this old man out there trying to sell buttons to survive? He probably has a New York City apartment that he got years ago and it's rent stabilized. So, but he's probably struggling to get by, and he has a button maker, and this is what he can do. He has a button maker and he's trying to survive. But the fact that this guy is out there having to sell buttons on the subway just to get by, that's part of the problem. Right? That the left has abandoned the working class. And they're not fighting to raise living conditions. They're not building the labor movement. They're not fighting to get jobs and schools and opportunities. And old guys like him are getting left behind. A lot of old folks are suffering right now. And the demand on the food banks in this city is massive. I mean, there's huge lines, and food banks are overwhelmed, and so many homeless people on the streets of New York City now. The number of homeless people that are talking to themselves and not doing well is massive. The amount of drugs, I just see drugs now. It used to be, you didn't see drugs. People had them covered up, and I see them now. You walk around Manhattan, you see somebody with a needle, in their arm. You see that all the time. You see people, smoking marijuana openly on the street. And it's a shame what's happened to this city. This is the capital of capitalism. This is the center of American imperialism, the center of the global financial empire. And people are struggling. And it kind of makes me sad. I wish there was a way I could have gotten through to that guy. Maybe he was just too old. Maybe, I've heard people talk about that sometimes people get frozen, right? Older folks, they get frozen in their youth. So maybe if there was a younger person, I could have gotten through to the younger person. So maybe it was because he was older. But I honestly am a little bit bummed that I couldn't get through to that guy. I'm a little bummed about it. I'm bummed I couldn't get through to that guy. Because I feel like I want to have these kind of conversations with people. And that's why CPI exists. We're here to fill a political void. There is something that is desperately missing in the political discourse. And that's what I was trying to get across to people. But whenever I'm frustrated by the current political situation, whenever I'm frustrated by it, that's why I like to listen to my car do music. That's why I like to think about all the great achievements, because this is what keeps you going, right? I've often made the analogy that being a communist is kind of like when you're on the ocean. They say if you're on the ocean and you're seasick, right, everything's moving around, you got to keep your eye on the horizon, because the horizon is the one thing that stays stable. And for me, communism, Marxism, socialism is my horizon. It is what makes the world make sense. It is what keeps things stable. Communism is my horizon, and it's the one thing that helps me understand things. And that's why I'm fighting for it so hard. And that's why I can see that the world desperately needs it. The fake synthetic left is going to lead nowhere. And the far right wing, libertarianism, free markets, that's not going to lead anywhere. Bigotry, hating people, hating China. The people need the message that we've got. What we've got is very unique, and it's an understanding of history that has changed the world drastically. I mean, we were just talking about International Women's Day. The world has greatly changed because of our movement. And what we do is really, really important. And that's why we've got to do it, because the world is changing and we increasingly have an important role to play. But the political establishment is moving in very, very strange directions. And so the role that we play is increasingly important. So before I go to the roll call, I'm going to put on one of the classic Canadian communist songs. This is called Workers of All Countries Unite. I'm going to put that on. If you got more super chats, send them my way. I'll write them down. Then after this song, we'll do the roll call, and then I'll answer super chat questions. So this is called Workers of All Countries Unite. It's from the Canadian Cultural Workers Association.
The proletariat is the gravedigger of the old society, and all the anti-Marxist trends won't save the bourgeoisie. Workers of all countries unite. Workers of all countries unite. This struggle is the final fight. This struggle is the final fight. With nothing to lose but chains, and a whole wide world to gain. Workers of all countries unite. The Marxist-Leninist parties have gathered in Montreal to hoist the glorious banner, our battle call. Workers of all countries unite. Workers of all countries unite. The light of Marxism burns bright. The light of Marxism burns bright. Defending Marxism's purity against distortions by the enemy. Workers of all countries unite. The unity of Marxist-Leninists is an irresistible trend, heralding the unity of all working men. Workers of all countries unite. Workers of all countries unite. Bolshevize the parties for the fight. Bolshevize the parties for the fight. With Marxism-Leninism, we'll usher in communism. Workers of all countries unite.
So there you go. There you go. Some of that classic Canadian communist music. All right. Names and locations. Names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who's with us tonight? Who is with us tonight? Who is with us tonight? I see Jenny Lynn is here. Very good. Who's the artist? It's from the Canadian Cultural Workers Association. We got Christian in Bergen County, Klaus Kinski in Germany, Rupert in England, Portland, ME. We've got JT24 in Mississippi. We got Ian in Chester, England. We got Jonathan C. says hello. Kirby in Chattanooga, St. David's, Bermuda. Ryan in Oakland. Jamie in St. Paul. Linwood, California. Dusty West in Virginia. We got Steve in Boston. We got Richmond, Virginia. Valen Anderson. Patch in Arizona. Portland, Oregon. We got Lori Spencer in the Oklahoma backwoods. We got Yada Yisrael in Chicago. We got Jim in Harrisburg. We got Heidi in Edinburgh, Scotland. Detroit. We got Christina in Portland. Briggy in Pennsylvania. Welcome, Briggy. I'm from Bergen County too, says Paul Sire, right? Mark from Mission, Texas. OYMX in New Zealand. Shout out to you. This guy does great videos, by the way. Go subscribe to OYMX's YouTube channel. Very skilled man. And I got to get back to you about some stuff. I'm sorry. I'm just drowning in so many things. Got so many people I need to get back to. Tommy and Gary. Micah in Las Vegas. We got Gorg Vlad in Chika, right? We got Gleb in Long Beach. Welcome, Gleb. We got Tyler in Missouri. Shout out to you, Tyler, my favorite English teacher. Tyler, he's a great guy. Still in Orange County. So there we go. There we go. Go subscribe to OMX. And don't forget, Gavin Lockhart is watching. Gavin's out in Illinois. He's awesome as well. Very, 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 very good. Very, very good. Molly McGuire in Orange County is with us. Vlad is in Chicago. Anybody else? Names and locations. Names and locations. I will call you out as I see you. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who's with us? Anyone else want me to announce them? Anyone else want to be called out? I see Fort Worth, Texas. Anthony. Who else? Steve in Boston. I'm looking at the other one here. Tommy and Gary. Welcome, Tommy and Gary. So there we go. There we go. Oh, Kieran from San Diego is with us. Welcome, Kieran from San Diego. Glad to have you with us, Kieran. FICO in Montreal. Leaf Jacobson is in Mexico. Colin in Greensboro. George in IE. I don't know what IE is, but welcome. Bay Area, California, marching orders. So there we go. There we go, everybody. There we go. The other night, my wife and I went to go see that new movie, Jesus Revolution. I'll probably talk about that on another stream. I've got some thoughts about it. I'll give my review of the movie. Mixed. Some parts of the movie were really good. Some parts of the movie were not so good. Politically, overall, I didn't leave a good taste in my mouth, but I'll tell you all about that later. Inland Empire, California. Very, very good. Isabel in Toronto. Dope Mining. There you go. There you go. There you go. All right. All right. So now I'm going to start answering super chat questions. What do you think of China's peace proposal on Ukraine? I think it was a step in the right direction, but as you can see, the United States and NATO wanted nothing to do with it. China said, hey, let's resolve this. And China has repeatedly said there's only going to be a political solution to the crisis in Ukraine. You're not going to have a military solution to it, right? It's not like one side is just going to just totally destroy the other. That's not going to happen. There needs to be a political solution. Ukraine doesn't want that, right? The Ukraine forces, they are being used by the West as a way to drain Russia of its resources, drain Russia of its allies, drain Russia of its soldiers, of its population, of its money. This is a trap that Russia has been forced into, and Russia did everything they possibly could do, everything it could possibly do to prevent having to do this, to not go in. And they've been forced to do it. And they would like to end this as quickly as possible. And they've kind of had their hand forced by the United States. They have to intervene at this point, and they would like this to end. And that's why, they don't want to negotiate, because the point is not to actually bring peace to the country. The point is to weaken Russia. That's why the NATO countries are doing that. And they're throwing the lives of Ukrainians away. I mean, they don't care about the Ukrainians, right? Irvine, California. They don't care about the Ukrainians. Don't fall for the tears over Ukraine. They want Ukrainians to keep dying. They're happy to throw the lives of the Ukrainians away. They don't care about the Ukrainians. This is about, hurting Russia. That's all this is about. And it's really, really unfortunate. They claim to care about the Ukrainians, but it's really just about hurting Russia. All right. I already gave a long answer about my thoughts on Women's Day, right? Oh, that's a good one. Good one. Wrote it down. Thank you, Nuplux. Thank you very much. Good question. But I already gave my thoughts on International Women's Day. What's my assessment of Raul Castro's economic reforms? Well, they have not, they don't have like huge private corporations and such. They have a lot of small business owners. A lot of stores have opened up. Things to that effect. People are selling their apartments. People own real estate and such. But the market reforms in Cuba are nowhere near the the market reforms in Vietnam or China. But Cuba is interested in going that way. For a long time, Cuba has been studying what kind of market reforms to carry out. They've been comparing Vietnam and China. There was a friend of mine years ago who studied economics in Cuba, 2011, 2012, and he was telling me that in Cuba, there's a lot of comparing the Vietnamese path to the Chinese path, and comparing results, and that the Cuban Communist Party. One thing that they have largely repudiated is they do say that the economic policies of Che Guevara were a disaster in Cuba. They were not successful. They admire Che Guevara for his bravery, his anti-imperialism, and his military leadership, but they argue that no, the economic policies that Che Guevara implemented during the 1950s were not effective. They were not good for Cuba. They didn't have good results. And it's funny because years ago I read that. There's a book. Do I still have it? There's a book. I used to have a book by Harry Targ. I don't think I have it anymore. There's a book I used to have, Cuba and the USA, A New World Order, where they said similar things. And if you read, the Cubans largely say that Che Guevara's economic policies were not very successful. Che Guevara believed in no material incentives, that using material incentives was like capitalism. People work hard, they get paid more. And that was what Stalin did. And we're going to try to be so much more revolutionary. Those were not successful policies. And the Cuban Communist Party at this point largely says, no, that kind of thinking was not correct. And in China, they say similar things, that during the Mao era, there was this belief that, we're not going to use material incentives. We're not going to reward people who work harder because we just want people to work for the good of the nation. Doesn't work. You can't do that, right? That while you still have a poor country, there's going to be inequality. This is an important thing. And Marx talks about this. And I really urge people to read the Critique of the Goethe Program. In the Critique of the Goethe Program, Marx makes clear that the basis of breaking down inequality is abundance. Equality is created by abundance. Hierarchy, inequality, is rooted in scarcity. And this is really important for people to understand. You cannot destroy inequality by willing it. And that was the trap that the communist countries fell into during the Cold War. They were surrounded, the imperialists were attacking them, and they said, okay, well, maybe we're going to be isolated, and maybe we won't be able to trade on the world market, but maybe we're going to be really poor, but we're going to be so egalitarian, we're going to be so fair, everything's going to be so equal. It didn't work. And in China, it was a disaster. In Cuba, it was a disaster. Pol Pot, Cambodia was a disaster. You cannot do that. You cannot create equality by willing it. The basis of equality is abundance. When there's enough wealth to go around, inequality fades away. The reason socialism is better than capitalism is not because in socialism there's less inequality or it's more fair. That is not the reason. Socialism is better than capitalism because under socialism, more wealth leads to greater prosperity in society. Under socialism, with a rationally planned economy, where the means of production function rationally according to a central plan, you don't have people homeless because there are too many houses. You don't have people hungry because there is too much food. Technological advancement does not result in people losing their jobs and becoming poorer. And that's how this book starts out.
In this book, the whole first chapter is about this issue. Right? The very first page, the first section of the book, the first chapter, the root of the problem. I say, let's for a moment imagine self-driving cars. We've been told this great technological achievement is not very far in the future. Soon, driving may be a thing of the past, and artificial intelligence, computer sensors, and other innovations may be applied in a way that makes automobile transportation completely automated. In a rational society, this would be cause for celebration. That's how I begin the book, by explaining what the problem with capitalism is and why we are in a prolonged economic crisis. The computer revolution, as I explain in this book, that was created by US imperialism and by the government sector. The intelligence agencies maneuvered to create the computer revolution to defeat the Soviet Union and to fulfill Brzezinski's strategy of putting US imperialism at the center of the global information revolution, the technotronic age of Zbigniew Brzezinski. The computer revolution resulted in creating a huge technological leap that rendered the ongoing problem of capitalism, the problem of poverty created by abundance, poverty amid plenty, the problem of overproduction, the problem of the tendency of the falling rate of profits, it caused that problem to speed forward like you never would have seen before. And that is the situation that we're in. And the rising economies of Eurasia, they don't have this issue. They don't have this problem. They have state-run economies. And in a state-run economy, you know, they figure things out. They manage the economy. But in capitalism, where the market and profits are in command, the computer revolution is an utter disaster. And it's leading to a long-term entrenched economic crisis. And I spend the first chapter of this book going into great detail. And Cuba is never going to have that problem because the government runs the banks and the government runs the factories and the government controls the power plants and the hospitals, and they're not going to have the problem of poverty amid plenty. But they're going to have inequality. And honestly, you know, more inequality might be better for their economy because, you know, when you have too much equality, it leads to a place where people don't care. People don't care, right? I mean, and that was one of the problems they had in the former Soviet Union was that, you know, it got to this point where people are thinking, there's no way for me to really get ahead, right? There's no way if I invent something new, I can't be compensated or rewarded for it. You know, and you hear stories from the former socialist countries. This is a story that I've heard many times about, you know, it was in Eastern Europe, I think, there was a doctor. Well, this guy worked really, really hard. He went to medical school, became a doctor. He had a higher wage than anybody else because he's a doctor. He spent all those years at medical school. He became a doctor. But he was miserable. Why? Because despite being a doctor, it didn't mean anything. You know, I mean, he got more money than everybody else, but what could he do with this money? He couldn't buy a new house with the money, couldn't buy a new car with the money. You know, he couldn't get more expensive food with the money. And so he just had money and it would just stack around the house. And he just had money and he couldn't do anything with it. And so he and his wife would burn the money for entertainment. This is a true story. And you meet people like this. In the old Soviet style economy, once you first get over that industrialization hub, once you electrify the country, once you wipe out illiteracy and you build hospitals and schools and all of that, you start to hit a problem. The Stalin model starts to stagnate because in the Stalin model, you're a doctor and you get paid 10 times what everybody else makes. You can't do anything with it. You can't buy a new house. You can't buy a new car. You can't buy more food than everybody else. I mean, what do you do with your money? You can't do anything with it. And so, and you hear things like that. Other problems that socialist countries have had. And Iran, by the way, you know, Iran, they don't call their country a communist or socialist country. They say it's not capitalism, but Islam. They have this exact same problem. I was talking about this when I was on Maverick News. They have too many doctors, right? Anyone can go to medical school. You test in, you get the grades, you can go to medical school. You go to Cuba, you go to Iran, there's a lot of doctors who don't get to actually work in hospitals, right? They went to medical school, they got their medical degree, and they're stuck being a cab driver because there's not enough slots. You know, they can only have so many doctors in the hospitals. And that's why Cuba and Iran, both of them, are like plastic surgery capitals. People from all over Latin America go to Cuba to get plastic surgery. Why? Because there's many, many doctors in Cuba who are desperate for work. You know, in Iran, same story. Whenever I was in Iran, I would see women, you know, in Iran, they wear the headscarves, women with bandages on their nose. Women from all over the Middle East go to Iran to get nose jobs. Why? Because there's all kinds of guys in Iran who learned to be doctors, got free medical school, and the Iranian medical system has no room for them. There's no place for them. They don't need that many doctors. That's why transgender surgery is freely available. In Iran, if you want a transgender surgery, not only can you get it, but it's free. And in fact, people from all over the world go to Iran to get transgender surgery. And the same for Cuba. If you're in Cuba and you want to get transgender surgery, you fly to Cuba, they give it to you. You know, and, you know, overall, the medical system of Iran, Cuba, you know, they tend to be very good, right? Because people have access to the medical care. And under the old system, they didn't. However, there's problems. Like people who get medical degrees and then have to end up being a cab driver because they've just got too many doctors in Cuba, right? You know, and one of the things that happens is that, you know, this, you know, you're Cuban with a medical degree who's stuck being a cab driver. What he will do is he will defect to the United States, and he will come to the United States, and he's way ahead of other medical folks. He doesn't have any medical debt. He got to go to college for free. He doesn't have any debt for going to medical school, no college debt, no student debt. He gets to be a doctor. And then he sits there and complains about how evil communism is. Oh, and communism is so horrible, even though I was a doctor. And it's awful. And it's like, you never would have had that education if it wasn't for socialism. You know, and we don't train enough doctors here, and it's very hard for Americans to become doctors, you know, and I mean, our education system is such a shit, and, you know, and all that. But at the same time, and same for Iran, right? You know, you're an Iranian guy who gets his medical degree and is stuck being a cab driver or is stuck, you know, doing something. He'll defect to the United States and he'll become a doctor, and then he'll complain, oh, Iran is an awful country. Oh, you know, I am a doctor, but I couldn't be a doctor in Iran. It's awful. And it's, no, you know, if it wasn't for the Islamic Revolution, you never would have gotten that medical degree. And the fact that you don't have student debt, you know, but being him in the United States, he's going to get way more money and have a lot more stuff being a doctor in America than he's going to have in Iran. And that these are problems that socialist countries had, right? Socialist countries did have these problems. Deng Xiaoping's market reforms and the economic reforms that Cuba has been having over the past few years are in response to these kinds of problems. These problems don't prove that socialism is bad, right? And that's the problem, is that when I talk about these problems with non-communists, when I talk about them, they just want to jump on it and see, that's why communism is bad. It's like, you can't talk to them about this, right? Because it's like, no, like, I mean, Cuba has the highest life expectancy in Latin America. You know, they have wiped out illiteracy. Their population all have free health. I mean, it's like they've done amazing things. So communism clearly is very successful, right? That's not the point. However, amid the success, they have this problem, right? And socialist countries tend to have these kinds of problems, that there's not room for people to have initiative. There's not room for people to get ahead. You know, if you're in a factory, for example, and this was a big problem in the Soviet Union, every factory, everything was completely government run. And you were in the factory and you realized that something could be done more efficiently, you would probably not be listened to. If you spoke up and said, you know, if we started doing this way, it would be more efficient, you're not going to be rewarded for that. The boss is going to be like, oh, why are you making my life harder? Why are you making my life harder? Just go in and do your job, you know? And if you come in and you point out a way that production could be more efficient, they're just going to be like, stop making our lives more difficult, right? And you get you get these problems of bureaucracy. Bureaucracy has problems, right? You get a situation where things are very inefficient, and people are just trying to go through the motions and collect their check. They don't have a desire to make things more efficient and all of that. And that's what China has figured out. You need a market sector, right? In the computer world, in the tech world, you need people to make new innovations and breakthroughs. You need people to discover new ways of doing things. That's what you need. You need engineers. You need creative people that can use their minds to solve problems. But in a state-run bureaucracy, there's no incentive for that. And in fact, that actually creates a problem. A guy who does that is going to be considered an annoyance, right? So, there is room in 21st century socialism for a market sector. Absolutely room for a market sector. But these problems don't even arise, mind you, until the country has gotten over that first big hurdle. When the country's still rapidly industrializing, when the country's still got 5-year plans, electrifying, these problems don't even become an issue. They don't become an issue until you get over that first hurdle. And once you get over that first hurdle and you've just built the country up with a state-run economy and with Stakhanovism, right? Stakhanovism, that was Stalin's great invention. I don't know if folks know about this. Stakhanovism. There was some guy, and I'm probably pronouncing this wrong. My Russian friends will have to forgive me. There was some guy who was a coal miner, Stakhanov, and he did some huge amount of coal, and he became like the national hero because he mined so much coal. And so in the Soviet Union, they started the Stakhanovich or the Stakhanovite movement, where if you worked really hard, they gave you a special reward. They gave you some extra money. They had an award ceremony where Stalin would come to your factory and give you a medal. And that was mainly what Stalin did. You have to think of socialist countries. Imagine that the whole country is one giant corporation, and the leader, Stalin or Mao or Fidel, is the CEO. That's really what these, or North Korea, for example. Kim Jong-un, Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il, what did they do? They spent their whole lives going from factory to factory to factory because their job was to motivate people to work hard. And so, Kim Jong-il, when he died, where was he? He was on a train when he died, going from one end of North Korea to another. And what was he going to do? He was going to visit a factory, and he was going to go to that factory, and the workers who worked the hardest at the factory, the president of the country was going to come shake their hand and give a medal on them for working really, really hard for the good of the country and give them a cash bonus. That was what the role. And that's why, and people used to always make fun of this, Fidel Castro, he would speak on May 1st. He would speak for 8 hours. He would give an 8-hour speech. And people would be like, that's insane cult of personality. No, it makes sense. The CEO of a corporation would probably do that because he's got to report on what every sector of the corporation is doing. He's got to explain the plan for the next year. He's got to, a very big, imagine the whole country is one corporation. The CEO, when he gives his annual report, it's not going to be a short annual report, right? And that's what Fidel was doing. Fidel was giving the annual report about what the economy was accomplishing, how the international scene is doing, and he's going through point by point by point. And that's really, when you think about 20th century socialism, when you think about the socialism of the Stalin model, the model that Stalin pioneered, that's what it was. It was the state is one giant corporation, and you have a CEO who's very charismatic, whose job it is to go around rewarding people. To go around rewarding people for working hard, right? And Trotsky was against that. He said, well, that's not communism when you're rewarding people for working hard. Well, no, you have to do that. That's a big part of 20th century socialism, what they call Stakhanovism. In Cuba, they call it emulation. They don't call it Stakhanovism, but that's what Fidel would do. Fidel would go around Cuba and he would visit a farm, and the workers who worked the hardest, he would shake their hand and give them a reward and give them a cash bonus, and they'd have a big ceremony. And people told me that one of the great things, if you were an American and you got to go to North Korea, they would take you to one of these factories because it was like every day Kim Jong-un, Kim Il-sung was visiting another factory. And, it would be the day that once a year that Kim Il-sung or Kim Jong-il, maybe once every 2-3 years, visits this factory. And, they would obviously that day they would stop production and all the workers would gather and Kim Il-sung would come into the room and people would start crying. It was like the greatest day in their lives. They would just sob because Kim Il-sung was there. And, the worker who had worked the hardest, would be there with his whole family, his wife and his kids. And Kim Il-sung would hug them and give them an award and everyone would applaud. And that was, that was what they did. They were like the CEO of a giant corporation, and their job was to reward people, to motivate people, and to keep the economy moving. That's what 20th century socialism is. And it is very good at getting countries over that great leap. And the miracles that it performed in the 20th century, raising Russia and China up from nothing, industrializing, building power plants, wiping out illiteracy, are massive. And that there is a certain level of the way that they're able to do it. That charismatic leader who goes around rewarding people, Stakhanovism, this is part of 20th century socialism. It starts to stagnate after a bit because after a while, people get cynical. And after a while, after a generation, that guy who gets the award, instead of people thinking he's a great guy and being jealous of him, they think, what a show off. Who does he think he is? And that you start to have problems with it. And that after you've industrialized that way, socialist countries have to transition to having a market sector, a strong market sector. State-run industries should be run that way, right? And it's a great way to run state-run industries. Reward people who work the hardest, have a charismatic leader who encourages people to go out and work for the country. But the tech sector, children's toys, restaurants, hotels, these things can't be run that way. You can't run a hotel this way. You can't. I mean, you can't run a restaurant this way. You need the people who own the restaurant to want the customer to have the best experience possible so they come back. There needs to be a profit incentive in running hotels. Or if you don't have that, it's a disaster. And maybe it's better to be a cooperative. I know they have that in some socialist countries where the hotel is collectively owned, right? The employees of the hotel all own a share and stuff. That's good. But you absolutely cannot run a hotel, as just a state-run industry. Like, that's just not going to work. It's just not going to work, right? And that, heavy industry is very, very good for socialism. Healthcare, hospitals, very good, in running socialism. But you need a market sector. And part of the market sector is just to motivate people. The market sector exists not only for the people who work in it, but also it exists for that person who works really hard and becomes a doctor and has all this extra money. They ought to be able to go spend it. They ought to be able to go on a vacation to a nice hotel, eat in a fancy restaurant. That once you get everyone having the basic necessities of life, right? And that's the thing. Once you get everyone having the basic necessities of life, once everyone's got jobs and healthcare and education, people are going to want to have fun. They're going to want consumer goods. They're going to want to go on vacation. They're going to want to, have amusement park, things like that. And things like that, you need more of the market for. So there you go. There you go. There you go. There you go. All right. Next question. Will there ever be a CPI presence in Canada? There already is. There's already a lot of people that are part of this community. We would like to organize an official CPI of Canada. I know there's people who've wanted to do that in the past. If you're still interested in that, please get in touch with me. We'd like to help you do that. There's people in Australia who've moved ahead and organizing in that direction. So yeah, I think that would be a great thing. And there's already a very big Canadian presence in this community and on these live streams. So there you go. There you go. Cy Hirsch versus the New York Times. Who's winning on Nord Stream 2? I mean, unless I'm missing something, I think Cy Hirsch is winning. Everybody knows at this point the United States did it. Everybody knows that. And it took the United States this long to come up with, the New York Times version of events where, it was a bunch of Ukrainians and Russians who've got nothing to do with the Ukrainian government. Come on. And it's like they couldn't even come up with this lie quick. I mean, oh, did I miss a super chat? Let me go up. I saw Gleb. Did I miss a super chat here? Newplex. What super chat did I miss here? Here we know. Kieran from San Diego. Is there a super chat I missed? I'm trying to scroll up here. Kristen's back. I don't want to miss his super chat, but I don't I don't see it. It's way back. Well, tell me what it was, Christian. Just reiterate it. I must have missed it. If I don't put it on the screen, that probably means I missed it. Maybe reiterate it. I'll put it on the screen and write it down here. But yeah, I think Cy Hirsch is winning. Everyone knows the United States did this. Everybody knows the United States did this. They won't say it. They won't acknowledge it for diplomatic reasons. But everybody knows the United States did this. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. And, you know, this is like this attempt from the New York Times to say some Ukrainians and Russians did this is like too little too late. It's too little too late. At the time that, I mean, we saw the threats that Joe Biden made, explaining basically the Nord Stream 2 will be destroyed. Nord Stream 2 is going to be shut down. And then we saw all these people all over social media thanking the United States for destroying Nord Stream 2. I mean, come on. Come on. I mean, it's like Cy Hirsch has a very strong record. Do you think there's a spiritual aspect of the ruling class's depopulation drive? All right, very good question. So that's where I'm at. I think the Nord Stream 2 version of events is standard. Look, I'll tell you, whoever they are, the CIA people who come up with the official story sometimes do such a shitty job. Do you remember when they tried to drone Nicolas Maduro? Remember when a drone flew over Maduro's rally and it was on live TV? The drone that flew over Maduro's rally and they shot it down. Remember that? The whole world saw the video of the drone. The army was told to scatter and they shot the drone down. It was on live television. Remember that? You remember that? I remember that. At the time it happened, I remember right after it happened, right afterwards, the Associated Press came out with a report. Oh, someone familiar with the matter says there was no drone strike and the explosion, it was actually a gas leak explosion. And at the time, I looked at that and I thought, okay, how is it that a drone flying onto the TV, being blown up, the army scattered, how is that a gas leak explosion exactly? Who was the dumb guy at the CIA who called it the Associated Press? It was actually it was a gas leak. How is a drone in the sky a gas leak? That is one of the dumbest, but that's what they always do. Whenever they get caught screwing up, there's somebody on the phone, you know, and the AP, I swear, you know, the AP calls up and, you know, we know about what happened with the, you know, that the AP has a direct line to American intelligence. The AP calls up some CIA person. And they're like, dub, it was a drug. It's like the kid with their hand in the cookie jar. Did you take the cookie, Johnny? No, mommy. It was a gas explosion. Like, it's like they can't even come up with a good lie. It's like, did you just try to kill Maduro with a drone? No, it was a gas explosion. Well, there wasn't an explosion. Like, we saw the drone in the sky. Oh. It's like the guy didn't even know the version of events yet. Like, the guy didn't know. Like, when they called him up, they're like, hey, did you just try to kill Maduro with drone? No, if something blew up, it was probably a gas explosion. That's what it was. It was a gas explosion. Well, no, we've actually got like video of the drone and the army scattered and they shot it on live TV and oh shit. Oh, great. All right. Call me back later. Click. I mean, it's just like, so they got some of the dumbest. So this thing happens, right? And it's like, in this case, with the Cy Hirsch thing, it's like Cy Hirsch comes out and he's like, yeah, White House destroyed Nord Stream 2. And they're just like, let's pretend this doesn't exist. And they called it a conspiracy theory on the internet. Well, they were technically correct. It is a theory that someone conspired, that someone being Joe Biden and the White House, that they did conspire to destroy the pipeline. So it is a theory about a conspiracy. And many people on the internet talked about it. So technically, when they called it a, quote, conspiracy theory from the internet, they were not lying. It was actually a conspiracy theory on the internet. It was a theory about a conspiracy, and there were people on the internet who discussed it. So technically, when they called it a conspiracy theory from the internet, they were kind of sort of telling the truth. They didn't lie. I mean, there were no lies exactly. Yeah, I remember when watching the U.S. ambassadors say, well, that's a conspiracy theory from the internet. And it's like, okay, we got the emails, we got Cy Hirsch, Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. It's like the whole world can see what's going on here, dude. The whole world can see what's going on here. It's a conspiracy theory on the internet. And then it like takes them all this time. At first they ignore it, and then finally the Washington Post has to acknowledge it's out there. And so then the New York Times is like, okay, well, actually it was destroyed by a group of Ukrainian and Russian people that are anti-Russia and have nothing to do with the government of Kiev. And it's like, okay. Okie dokie. Why did Joe Biden say that if Russia invades Ukraine, the Nord Stream 2 pipeline will be destroyed? He just happened to know about this group. And he just knew that they would see it and they would just be so full of outrage they would go do it. And he just knew that, I mean, this is getting stupider by the minute. It's getting stupider by the minute. And yeah. So the emperor has no clothes. And if you can do something like this, and the funniest thing about this is, like, do you know how much environmental damage was done? Like, these people are the same people that are like, climate change. Oh my God, we're all going to die. Climate change. And these are people that are always complaining about pollution, environmental, and they blew up a fucking natural gas pipeline. And all kinds of fumes. And I mean, look at the environmental impact of what they did. Yeah, that's ecology right there. That's Joe Biden's climate change ecology program. Blow up a natural gas pipeline in the middle of the ocean. Right? There you go. I mean, that is, the biggest release of methane gas ever. Do you think they really care about the environment? And yes, that's a good one too. Where's Greta? You blew up a natural gas pipeline. How dare you? I didn't hear that. Didn't hear it. How dare you blow up a natural gas pipeline? How dare you? How dare you? Didn't hear it. I'm waiting for Greta. Greta, where are you, Greta? There you go. There you go. Anyway, next question. Bum, bum, bum. Will we have to reindustrialize the United States? Yes and no. I mean, I hope there's not a huge civil war or something, and, obviously we'll have to revamp the infrastructure of the country. But in terms of industrialization, I mean, the country's already electrified. The country's already got water systems. They all need to be revamped. The power plants need to be revamped. I mean, the country needs a makeover. It needs to be redone. But the basic industrialization has been carried out. So there you go. I mean, unless there's some big catastrophe, unless things just continue to deteriorate unaltered, or there is a big catastrophe, I would say not really. I mean, we're obviously going to need to reboot the country. But there you go. There you go. And then the last question I've got here, and if people have more super chats, throw them my way, is, do you think there's a spiritual aspect to the ruling class's degrowth and depopulation drive? Yes and no. No, in the sense that I think it is about economics. It's about the fact that they're at the top of the food chain. And if the world continues to grow, they're going to lose being at the top of the food chain. And that is it. It is, in its essence, degrowth is about economics. Imperialism is about holding back economic development. That's the whole thesis of Lenin's book, Imperialism, the Highest Stage of Capitalism. So at its root, it's about economics. However, does it take on a spiritual component? Absolutely. Absolutely. There's an opera. It's actually quite entertaining. My wife and I went to see it a few years back at the Met before the pandemic. Götterdämmerung by Richard Wagner. Richard Wagner was notorious for his sexual energy. There was obviously no sex in the opera, but the music, if you listen to Wagner, it is loaded in sexual energy. The climax of the opera, Götterdämmerung, is the Brunhild immolation scene, where the hero Siegfried has been killed, and Brunhild is so heartbroken about the death of her hero that she gets on her horse and she rides her horse into the funeral pyre, and the flames spread across the entire world, and the whole world burns in flames, and the gods and the whole modern world is destroyed, and all that's left is the beauty of the Rhine River. Right? And that if you listen to a lot of what these degrowther kind of people say, they really do want a gigantic orgasm to bring the world back into balance. That's what the Aquarian Conspiracy by Marilyn Ferguson, that's what it's about. Marilyn Ferguson was the spiritual guru of Al Gore, and she was the occult guru who ran Silicon Valley. She was tied to Stanford University and Stanford Research Unit. She was the CIA occultist. And a lot of these hippies that were big in Silicon Valley and were working with the CIA and were out of Stanford University, they were all listening to Marilyn Ferguson. And she was talking about the Aquarian Conspiracy and this movement of global awakening that was going to bring the world back into balance, and LSD and drugs. And go and look at Marilyn Ferguson. And yeah, that stuff is really spiritual. It's really religious. And it's all about how we're going to have this giant catastrophe to bring the world back into balance. Right? It's that we've gotten too far from Mother Nature, and Mother Nature needs to reassert her power and control us. And, and it's like they want to end the Wagner opera. And what it's really about is that, look, and I've talked about this before, right? Among the middle class, you have orgasmic politics. Right? Sigmund Freud, psychoanalysis is a great, this is heavily tied in with this as well. But among the middle class, you do have a drive for catharsis and release. And the noble savages thing, right? The belief that primitive man was better before he was corrupted by modern technology. That's a big thing with these folks as well, right? And the belief that we need to get back in, the world needs to get back into balance. The belief we need just some big, gigantic release, some big climax. This is a big part of middle class politics. It's not scientific Marxism. Some people see the revolution as a big climactic release. That's actually not what it is if you read Marx. It's just, a change in the means of production. But a lot of the middle class elements that are not so much looking to improve their living standards in their lives, but they're looking to be entertained. They see politics as a way of getting their emotions out and being entertained. A lot of them are looking for an orgasm. They're looking for a climax. And they're angry at the modern world. Julius Evola, one of the thinkers of Italian fascism, he wrote a book called Revolt Against the Modern World. Look at the futurists. Read the Futurist Manifesto. That was a very influential document of the driving force of Italian fascism. And it's all about, we want to build up for this big, dramatic explosion that will correct everything. That is spiritual. And that a lot of occultist guru types, a lot of occultists, right? And this is interesting because I grew up in a working class town. A lot of working class folks were evangelical. We had Catholics, we had mainline Protestants, but occultism was not part of what I grew up with. People were not into that in the area that I grew up in. My dad is a very science-oriented guy. He liked The Amazing Randy. He liked debunking, faith healers and stuff like that. My mother is deeply religious. And we went to a mainline Protestant church. In my town, one's religion tended to be associated with one's profession. Factory workers, lower income folks tended to be evangelical, right? I mean, they tended to be either old order Mennonites or they went to like a mega church, a big like evangelical church. car dealers, realtors, people like that tended to be Roman Catholic. And then doctors, lawyers, librarians, people with master's degrees and such, they tended to be mainline Protestants, United Church of Christ, Methodists. I grew up in the United Church of Christ. And, that was that. I mean, you didn't have other religions in my town. And if you did, people were quiet about it because that was considered a faux pas. And I remember when I went to college, I assumed that people that were not religious were like my dad. They were into science and skepticism. And it was when I was in college, I learned that, in suburbs, right? I was in the countryside, but in like suburbs, especially for Roman Catholic girls, they all go through a Wicca phase where they're into witchcraft and they're into Wiccanism or whatever. And, a lot of people go and see psychics, and a lot of people are into tarot cards, and a lot of people are into, a lot of the occult stuff, right? The astrology, there's so many forms of it. That stuff is very widespread. It's a big part of the culture, right? A big part of the culture. It's just kind of a big part of the culture, and it's something I didn't really have much experience with. And that I've also noticed that for rich people, for very wealthy people, very, very wealthy people, it's their form of religion, right? That a lot of very wealthy people, they think, well, I'm not going to go see a Baptist preacher. I'm above that. I'm a rich person. I'm worldly. I've traveled the world. I can't go and join a Baptist church. I can't go and, follow a fundamentalist pastor. So instead, they follow an occultist. And that is a big part of, and they talk about the idle rich. A lot of these people who don't have to work, very, very wealthy people, they follow an occultist guru, right? Aleister Crowley. He was the famous one of this, right? And he was this flim-flam man who was around in like the 1800s, and a lot of very wealthy people would go listen to him. And he invented these elaborate rituals with naked women on the altars and these weird ceremonies. And his teaching was like, "Do as thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." It was this like libertarian, and you like discovered the whole thing is every individual should fulfill their own will. But it was like the spiritual journey. He did like counseling with you to find your own will, to find out who you are so you could live true to your own will. And for very rich people, the kind of thing that you and I might get from religion, there's a crowd of very, very wealthy people that get that from the occult. They get that from, I don't know what you want to call it, that whole thing I just listed, tarot cards and also like there are these gurus too, right? Like, there are these guys from India. There's a number of them who just go around giving speeches, and people pay lots of money to go sit and listen to guys from India. I think there's a guy, Prem Rawat, and he's just a guy from India, and you go and listen to him and you breathe with him, and he teaches you not to worry and to be happy, and that it's like religion for rich people, right? And this was something that growing up I just had no perception of. This was not part of my reality at all. I knew about religion and I knew about religious skepticism. I did not know about this kind of thing. And this is a big thing. I mean, all over the world, right? And this stuff exists in China. This stuff exists all over the world. You have this. This is just part of culture, right? Is, people talk about shamanism, people talk about, and that people need a place to let their emotions go. People need a ceremony they can do to try and make happiness. This is part of the human condition, right? And that for very rich people, it often manifests itself with the occult. There are some very rich evangelicals too. I understand the Kroc family that own McDonald's. They are fundamentalist Christians that are big supporters of Israel. And they're not into any of this stuff. They're fundamentalist Christians, so there are very rich people that are evangelicals too. That exists. You go to Texas, there's a lot of very rich evangelicals. There's a lot of very big churches, very, very well-funded churches. You know, I mean, that exists too. There are rich evangelicals, but among a lot of wealthy folks, this kind of stuff, the occult, it plays the role of religion in their life. And, you know, and it's like people want to get conspiratorial about this. And they're like, Caleb's saying the elite are Satanists. No, they're not Satanists, but like, you know, Marilyn Ferguson, you know, she was doing this kind of stuff at the White House. She was the personal, you know, Al Gore was paying her loads of money to sit down with Tipper, you know, Tipper and you know, Al Gore would sit down with Tipper and, you know, and Marilyn Ferguson would sit there and counsel them and do spiritual stuff. And this is Marianne Williamson. She's one of these. I mean, that's what she did. She was doing this for Oprah and she was doing this for a lot of rich people, right? This is Marilyn Ferguson. This is her life. That's what she is. These things exist, right? These things exist, and this is just, it's out there. But a lot of this stuff is very individually focused. A lot of the occult stuff is very, very individualist. It's focused on you as an individual, finding fulfillment, finding satisfaction. About the individual finding fulfillment, finding satisfaction. And it's also about, there's going to be, the way you find your satisfactions, you have a big explosive moment, this big explosion that leaves you going, and you found your satisfaction, right? And that that leads to degrowth. If you put that into politics, if the answer to politics is that we need to have a big explosion, and then everything will be back in balance, that leads to degrowth. So I think there is a spiritual component to it. The main driving force is economic, but a lot of the occultist, you know, the Aleister Crowley stuff, Marilyn Ferguson, a lot of that stuff does lead to, we just have to have a big explosion to bring the world back into balance and all of that. It does. It's Wagnerian. It's Wagnerian. And it's because it's individualist. That's the problem, right? It's not collective. It's all about your individual journey. It's not a collective thing at all. It is very individualist. And Freud was like this, and Freudian psychoanalysis was like this. And it's really tapping into your sex drive and projecting it into politics. So there you go. There you go. That's my thought. I hope that answers your question, Christian. All righty. Thoughts on Tucker Carlson's breakdown of January 6th. Look, I trust Tucker Carlson way more than I trust any of the liberals. And I'm so sick of the triggered January 6th crap. I think Tucker Carlson is probably right here. You know, and he's got video footage and it's like, and the fact that they're all jumping on him over it. Oh, how dare you? You know, looks to me like, yeah, I mean, I'm thinking Tucker Carlson was onto something. Maybe I'm wrong. I need to do more investigation. But on the surface, when I look at things, it's like, who do I trust more, Tucker Carlson or the mainstream media? You know, and how many, you know, setups and false flags have we had over the years? You know, I'm with Tucker on this one. I'm with Tucker. Changed my mind. I'm willing to be changed. Tucker's wrong about China. He's wrong about a lot of things, but I'm with Tucker on this one so far. I'm with Tucker. I'm with Tucker. Get out the way, old Dan Tucker. Anyway, all right. This last one here. Thoughts on Louis C.K. and I resemble him. How do I resemble Louis C.K.? Just because I have red hair and I have a goatee? Like, I'm not bald. I'm not like a chubby bald guy. Like, I've heard this before. I do not resemble Louis C.K. I am red-haired. All redheads do not look the same, my friend. If you put me and Louis C.K. together, I can guarantee you could very easily tell us apart. Now, do we have a similar cadence in the way we speak? Maybe. You know, I believe we both have Irish heritage to some degree or other, right? I believe he's got some Irish heritage, so do I. We both are redheads. But you know, we look completely different. As far as the whole scandal with him, you know, I know through some people I've talked to who actually know him, you know, I have some back channel connections. Everything he did was consensual. Everything. You know, Everything he did was consensual. And that actually, if you read the details of what he was accused of, they admit that. Right? But he's called a rapist. He's called all these kind of things. And maybe he shouldn't have asked. Right? And maybe but you know what he did? He would pleasure himself in front of women. But he would ask first. And they said yes every time. And there were instances where women said, please don't do that. And he didn't. Now, some people think it was inappropriate for him to ask. And that's true. I can guarantee you that's one thing I would never do. I would never, in a professional context, if it was someone I was working with or whatever, I would never do that. But, you know, if you look at the details, I mean, he's not a rapist. And he didn't even touch anybody. And he said to women consensually, may I do this? And they, in every instance, said yes to him. So him getting canceled for this is bullshit. It's bullshit. You know, if he had done it and the women had said no, that's assault and he should be jailed for that, right? That's indecent exposure, right? If he had not asked, if he just did what he did, obviously not okay, you know, but, and maybe there should have been an issue with an employer there. I mean, if he's employed by a company and this is another employee of the company and he'd asked and they said, yes, it's still not okay. And the employer probably needs to step in and say, dude, you don't do that at work, you know, do that on your own time. Do that on your own time. You know, you don't do that in the workplace. That kind of thing has no, you know, and if he's a comedian and if I guess, according to the reports, he was doing this in the workplace, that's not okay. But that's a workplace disciplinary matter at that point. That's what that is. You know what I mean? That's, you know, someone, you know, that needs to be handled at the job, right? And they need to go to the boss, right? If he's working at a comedy club, there's somebody else who works at the comedy club and they say, hey, he asked me to do this and I said yes and he did this, then that needs to be handled internally, right? Because if you said yes and he did it, it's still not okay and it shouldn't have happened at work, but it's not the same thing. But the way we responded to it was very stupid. You know, the way we responded to it, you know, and again, they never get all the details there, right? Look into the actual details of what Louis was accused of. Louis C.K., what was he accused of? He was accused of doing some consensual stuff. You know, I mean, and he used very poor judgment, I think, about where he did it. But he's not a rapist. He didn't rape anybody. He didn't do anything that wasn't consensual. He didn't touch anybody even. He said, can I do this? In every instance, they said, yes, you can do this. He should have not done it anyway. It was still not appropriate. It was still not appropriate. But the response, I mean, on Twitter, people still call him a rapist. He is not a rapist. People call him a pedophile. How is he a pedophile? They were all adult women. Like this is, and it just shows you, this is how social media works, right? And there are some people I really feel sorry for. I really feel sorry for such people. And I try to feel sorry for these people. You have to, the only way you can learn to not be, you know, especially when you've been targeted with this kind of bullshit, is the only way you can not become a hateful person and just become hateful and pessimistic is you have to learn to have empathy for these kind of people. But one of the worst kind of people is somebody who all they ever feel that they'll ever be able to accomplish is canceling somebody. And there are people like that. And I mean, they all come after me. Well, they don't all come after me, but a lot of them come after me. You got to think, this is all these people are ever going to be. And that's like their claim to importance in their life. You know, it's like, I got to help cancel somebody. That's all they got. That's all they're ever going to be. And they know that on some level. And that's why they're trying so hard to be that, because that's the only thing that they're ever going to be. That's all that they'll ever be, is somebody who got to kind of be important for 2 seconds by canceling somebody. And it's like, wow, that's all you're capable of ever being, is the guy who canceled somebody. You know? I mean, I feel sorry for you, right? And I will say one thing about the people who engage in this kind of behavior is they have a very short-term thinking, right? have a very short-term way of thinking, because it's, it's like, okay, you can do this, and somebody that you're kind of mad at will suffer, and you will get a little bit of attention on social media for a week or two. But after that, you're going to keep going. You're going to keep living. And the person you did this to is also going to keep living. And what? And that's the thing. It's like all these people that did this to Louis C.K., right? And it's like, okay, he shouldn't have done that. He shouldn't have not done that in the workplace. That wasn't okay. But all the people who made it into something it wasn't and just went after him and were demanding that he get fired and all that, it's like, okay, all right, you did. You did it. You made your point. Louis back. He's doing his thing. And I don't even know any of these people's names. I do not even know any of the people who claim to be victims of Louis C.K., any of the people who went after. I don't even know who they are. I don't even know who they are. They're nobody, because it doesn't matter. And they're always going to be nobody. All these people ever have is going to be, and for years, I guarantee you, they will tell their friends, hey, did you hear about like Louis C.K., this comedian like 20 years ago who pulled his dick out? And, they think that is the only thing they'll ever have their whole life. 40 years from now, 50 years from now, they're going to be walking around with a cane. Years ago, Sonny, there was a comedian named Louis C.K., and I helped ruin his career. He didn't speak for 3 years because of me. It's like, look at you, And so you have to learn to feel sorry for these kind of people. You have to learn to feel sorry for these people, because it's like, this is all they got. They embarrassed somebody on social media. They caused somebody some problems. Louis C.K. shouldn't have done what he did, but the reaction to it was ridiculous and over the top. This was a workplace issue. If someone's doing consensual things they shouldn't be doing, that's a workplace matter. That's not a matter for the public. Now if someone's doing unconsensual things, totally different story. But if someone's doing consensual things they shouldn't be doing in the workplace, that's a workplace issue. That's all that is. But social media brings out the worst in people. It really does. Social media brings out the worst in people. And it really, and then on top of that, people don't think long term. Right? They're not thinking like, okay, like how can I be strategic here? Right? Because somebody like Louis C.K. could be very beneficial to one's career. Right? Working with someone's got that kind of connections and access, like you would gain a whole lot more by having Louis C.K. as your friend than as your enemy. But if you're just like, oh, I'm kind of mad about something and I want to get attention for myself, and it's just like, okay, all right, you just blew it all. And of course they want to get so much attention. It's never just what happened. And a lot of these cancel cases, if you were to just describe what happened, it would be 3 sentences. Like in the Louis C.K. case, what happened? He asked some women if he could touch himself. They said yes, and he did. That's what happened. That's all that happened. Should he have not done it? Probably not. But is it worth everything that happened to him? Losing 3 years, he has to be silent. Is it worth what the consequences were? Absolutely not. But that's what happened. I just said 3 sentences. He asked women if he could touch himself. They said yes, and he did. And it happened a number of times. That's all he's accused of doing. That's it. But they never want it to be that simple. If you read the New York Times articles, they were all really long and complicated, and they all want to make it in this big dramatic, oh, women's rights. But no, that's what happened. Was someone was inappropriate in the workplace and did a number of consensual things, did one consensual thing with a number of people that he shouldn't have done. And that kind of behavior doesn't belong in the workplace. It shouldn't, and that's a matter for the employer to take up if it does go on in the workplace. I'm repeating myself, but that's that. It's just like, and they don't want people to actually look into it, because if you just spelled it out that way, Most people would just be like, okay, this is stupid. I don't want to hear about it. And honestly, that's most people's response to, if you just give people the facts about a lot of these situations, people are like, this is stupid. I don't want to hear about it. So you have to make it complicated. And you have to, put in all kinds of personal drama about the person and character assassinate them. And you have to throw in all kinds of gossip and all kinds of stuff. You have to do everything you can to make it more interesting than it is. Because if you just put it on the table, what happened, most people are just like, this is gross. I don't want to think about Louis C.K. and I don't want to think about his body parts and what he does. And it was consensual, right? Okay, yeah, not interested. Moving on, right? I mean, and that's the thing. Sex is a very private thing. Sex is not something that's meant to be on the front page of the newspaper, and what people do in their bedrooms with consenting adults is no one else's business, honestly. Right. I mean, and it's just, most people don't want to hear about it either. Most people are not interested. It's a very low, kind of shallow person who really wants to know. You just don't talk about those kind of things. That's just a private, personal thing. And, there you go. Most people aren't interested. Most people are not interested. Jenny Lynn, she says these people are making a mockery of actual rape, actual harassment, and actual pedophilia. It's disgusting. And absolutely they are. And for very selfish reasons. When it really gets down to it, a lot of these cases, not all of them, there's many cases where there's actual assault, actual rape, Harvey Weinstein, etc. But in so many of these cases, they're doing it just because they want attention. That's the only reason. That's the only reason. And that's all it's about. They just want attention. And that's all it's about. And it's like somebody famous, somebody who's mildly famous, somebody who's very famous, like Louis C.K. I've got something that can get me attention. And it's like, to people who've actually been raped, people who've actually been sexually assaulted. And the other thing I really don't understand, and this is, and I mean, I don't even know what to say really about this, but there are certain people, and I've met them. And I don't understand it, and I don't know why, and that's really between them and their psychologist or their support group or whatever. There are certain people that I've met who all they think about all day long is sexual assault and rape and murder and pedophiles and axe murderers, and that's all they think about all day long. And of course, they're the kind of people that jump all over this kind of stuff on the internet because it's all they think about all day long. I mean, and if you talk to them, I don't know if it's trauma of something that they've experienced or if it's I don't know what it is, but there are certain people that it's not healthy. It's really not healthy. All they think about all day long is sexual assault and rape and it's like that whole thing about if you're a hammer, the whole world looks like a nail. And that's what they think about, right? And it's just they sit around and like every event that happens, every person they meet, they interpret everything from the framework of sexual assault, rape, and it's sad, and I mean, thank goodness you're not one of those people, right? And because I mean, it must really suck to be one of those people. And often the kind of people who drive these kind of cancels, you talk to them and they have some extreme trauma in their past or something happened and we don't know, or we don't really know what happened. Okay. And people say, well, that's because they were sexually assaulted. Not necessarily, right? But there's something off about them for their own reason. Maybe they had a parent who was constantly saying, oh my God, you better do what I say or else you're going to get kidnapped and raped. There's different things that can happen. Sometimes it is that they have their own trauma. Sometimes they've got issues. For whatever reason, they're one of these people who it's just all they think about all day is sexual assault and rape. And that's just all they think about. That's all they think about. And it's just like every event, everything that happens, they reinterpret it in their mind. They reinterpret it in their mind as someone being a pedophile, someone being a rapist, someone being and that is, I just be happy you're not one of those people. Just be happy you're not one of those people because And those people, of course, they're obsessed. They want to cancel everybody. They want to cancel people they've never heard of. They want to, and it's a dark place to be. And that's what you have to do. You have to, if you don't want to just hate these people, which is very tempting and very easy to do, you have to learn to kind of feel sorry for them and think about what their motivations are. And when I think about these people, the people who drive the cancel culture, sucks to be them. Sucks to be them. If they had a real job and a family, they wouldn't be doing that. They might disapprove of other people's actions, but they wouldn't be doing that. They wouldn't be sitting at home canceling people all day. They'd be raising kids. They'd be working at their good paying job. If these people had a real opportunity, a good paying job, a fulfilling community to be part of, a family, a wife and kids, they'd be much happier. But they don't. Instead, they get to sit at home on their computers canceling people all day. That's all they got. Sucks to be them. Sucks to be them. Sucks to be them. And, some people are just going to be in that dark place. And what I see CPI as being, and it has been for many people, it has been their ticket out of that dark place. And that's what I was alluding to in my speech. I don't know if you saw my speech at the conference, the recent February 19th event. I alluded to that, but I will never make the mistake again, ever, of believing that I can lead people out of the light. These people lead people out of the darkness. There are some people who don't want to be led. I can help you, but you have to lead yourself out of the darkness. I can't lead you out of the darkness. I can't do it. I cannot lead you out of the darkness. I can help you help yourself. If you want to make CPI your community, make CPI your life, give your life to this, get past the cancel culture, get past the pessimism and the hopelessness, get past, if you want to become part of this community and give yourself to that, I can help you. But I can't, I'm not Jesus. I'm not divine. I don't have magical powers. And honestly, I have put myself in bad situations before because I have believed that I could help people. But these people made clear to me, all of them, that they didn't want to be helped. And when they made that clear to me, I should have cut them out. Because when you try to help people who don't want to be helped, they don't appreciate it. They don't appreciate it. People who don't want to be helped, if you help them, they don't appreciate it. And that's something I've learned the hard way. Sometimes if someone doesn't want to be helped, don't help them. Don't help them. And when you try to help people who don't want to be helped, they're not doing anything. And there's a lot of people that the internet and social media and our toxic, atomizing individualist culture has just really fucked them up inside here. Some of those people want to push back and be part of something. And some of them kind of do. But unless they're willing to make a decision in and of themselves, you can't save them, and you shouldn't try, right? And if you try, what's going to happen is you're going to reach out, and instead of you pulling them up, they're going to pull you down. And that's one thing that people that are in this hopeless place of mind, that's one thing that they do, is they like to pull other people down. Why? I don't know. What do they get out of it? Nothing. But are they very good at making life decisions and figuring out how to advance themselves? No. So, they're not in the situation they're in because they're good at making life decisions. So, for them, for whatever reason, people that are miserable and hopeless, and it's something they really like to do, is to find people who are not miserable like them and try to pull them down. It's like an infectious disease. Depression is like an infectious disease. That's really what it is. It's like these people, not only are they infected, but they want to go then infect other people, right? They have to spread their germ to other people. You know, that's really what it is. I mean, it's weird. It's like it's a spiritual disease. It's not a physical disease. There's not a depression germ. But a lot of these very depressed, hopeless, pessimistic people, part of their disease is this desire to harm other people and rope other people into their pessimism. That's really what it is. And it's shocking to watch it happen. And it's scary. And that's what makes it so dangerous, right? And that's why, you know, and this is the thing. I'll just talk about this briefly, right? And then I'll end because we're out of super chats. But I'm on here, you know, what the heck? It's you know, it's Wednesday night, we're talking. All this stuff that they consider to be cult behavior is stuff people have been doing for thousands of years to keep their cool. Chanting, right? Communists have chanted at rallies from the beginning of time, right? And I've been told chanting is a cult thing. No, it's not a cult thing. People have been chanting. If you've ever, is the Democratic National Convention a cult? You know, but after you've been at a rally and people are chanting, you feel good. You get this sense of collective vision. Yes, we're chanting. People have been exercising in groups for years. People have been singing songs together for years. This isn't cult stuff. This is what human beings have been doing for thousands of years to not be depressed. Because human beings are collective. We long to be part of a group. We long to be part of a family. So when you get people together and you build a community and people sing together and people chant together and people you know, clap and exercise and work together as a group, when you build group cohesion and it makes people feel good, it gives you a high, it gives you like a really good feeling when you do it. It's a great feeling to build cohesion. That's a good thing. It's not a cult. That's not brainwashing. That's a good thing to do. They do it in communist countries. They do it in capitalist countries. They've been doing it for thousands of years of human civilization. This is what people have been doing in order to build community. They sing songs, they chant, they exercise, they move in formation. And, you know, if you think that's evil cult brainwashing, I mean, don't participate. I mean, you know, just don't do it. You know, no one's making you, but you know, I mean, it's not, human beings are collective in nature. Everything that human beings have achieved the past 1,000 years has been collective. And human beings are happiest when they work in groups. Atomization and isolation will further and lead to depression. They will. The breakdown of societal cohesion is part of the neoliberal agenda. It makes people easier to control. Bingo! Bing, 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 bing. You are correct. And I spent many, many pages in this book talking about this very phenomenon. They don't want any organization to exist. They don't want any group, any family, any church, any political group. They want you. They want the only thing that influences your worldview and your minds to be this thing. They want this thing to have a 100% monopoly on you. That's what they want. And that's why Netflix is obsessed with cults. Cults are here, cults are there. That's why the cancel culture is so bad. They want this thing to have a complete monopoly. This thing is trying to kill you. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be on there. You're probably watching me on one of them right now. But you have to remember when you interact with this thing is trying to kill you. This thing is Apple, the corporation Apple, the Silicon Valley fascists who run Twitter and Facebook. They are trying to kill you. They are trying to kill you. And so you have to interact with this very carefully. Don't let this control you. Do not let this control you, because the people who made this are trying to kill you. They are. They are trying to kill you. They want to drive down the population. They think there's too many people in the world. They're listening to the Aquarian conspiracy and Marilyn Ferguson, and they are trying to kill you. So use this very carefully, because the people who designed it are evil and want to kill you. That doesn't mean you shouldn't use it. You have to use it, right? You know, just like you know, if you boycotted every evil corporation, you'd never buy anything, because all the big monopolies are evil. You have to buy products, right? You have to drink soda. You have to watch television. You can't boycott everything that's bad, but use this very carefully. Use it very, very carefully, because the people who control this and the people who own it are evil. This is like the Ring in Lord of the Rings. That's really what this is. This is a lot like the Ring in Lord of the Rings. Sometimes Frodo has to put on the ring. The ring ain't good for him. And that's the point. That's the point. Right? I have deleted Twitter from my phone. I have deleted Facebook from my phone. I can only tweet from my computer. I can only Facebook from my computer. It's been great. It's been great. This is good. I agree with InfraWiki here. By the way, InfraWiki is great. InfraWiki is like a great project. It's like, showing our community and adjacent communities. It's a great project. It's a really great project that's being done here. And go and link it. But we need to build good software that's not evil. I could not agree more. But I am totally with you. But check out the actual InfraWiki. It's a great project that this individual has been working on. All right, folks. I'm gonna say good night for now. I'm gonna put on the closing music. But there you go. There you go.
Surge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.